Okay, now we're going to make a 16 plait 8 foot bullwhip. Now the basis, the handle for these bullwhips is this, and this piece here is an 8-inch 5mm piece of spring steel. Now I used to use these, which is a bridge spike. It's 8 inches long, but it's 9mm. Now the reason I changed from these to this is because this is much thinner. It's as strong as this, if not stronger, because there's no bend in this whatsoever. It just springs back. And this, using this piece of thinner steel, allows me to put more plaited belly into the whip. When I used to use this piece of steel here, I used to have to be very careful about the thickness of the strands that I used. Not the width, but the thickness, because if I wasn't very careful, I'd end up with an oversized whip. This way here, I don't have to worry about that, and yet I still achieve the same strength. Now, this is it. This is the basis of the whip. This is the very start of the whip. Now what we do here is, oh God, I wish I could get this right. I haven't got a cameraman here, so I've got to look at the TV screen and try and do this. So we're rough and ready here. There'll be no cuts in this. It'll be as it comes off the video camera. So bear with me. What I have to do here is cut a rebate here, because we have to cover the end of this piece of steel, because if we don't, the piece of steel will wear straight through the whip within a very short time. Now I'm going to grind this rebate in. I'll show you how that's done. Be very careful with grinders. They'll take the ends off your fingers very smartly. So if you've got no experience with this, with a grinder, get someone else to do this for you that has the experience to use a grinder. Here we go. Dip it in water, keep it cool. Take this down. Make sure you take this rough edge off. There we are. Now this rebate here is about 1 inch wide, that way. I've taken it down so that when I put a piece of kangaroo hide leather on this, it will come up to the same height as the original piece of steel. And that's the idea of that. Okay. Now I'll show you what goes on the end of this piece of steel now. We'll go from there. Right, now when you do a lot of whips, you'll always have scraps of leather lying around, and this is what you use them for, these sort of scraps of leather. Now the piece of leather that's got to go on the end of this handle has to be just a nice neat fit around the piece of steel. This is about 18 inches long. It's cut down from there to a nice long taper. Now these scissors that I'm using are called Mundile. They're leather shears. They have a serrated edge there, and this is the sharp cutting edge here. They're made in Brazil. They're quite inexpensive, but these will cut through 5mm leather without any problems whatsoever. So if you have a good pair of these scissors like this, and they've got to be sharp, this is what all that you'll need to cut your pieces of leather out like this. You can also buy what they call leather shears through your Tandy stores, but I found these little scissors here are just about the the bee's knees. Now all we do is make sure that fits around there nice and neat, you see. Now we'll tie that off with some cotton, and we'll also put some strips of leather in there which will equal the thickness of this end piece here, and that just fills that in, makes it nice and round all the way through there. I'm just going to get some leather and we'll do that. Right, now here we go. These are just some thin pieces of leather that I've had, a bit of lace, cotton. Now the cotton I use is just some cotton that I bought at a sale. It's a nylon cotton mix. It's thin, and that's all I use it for, is to bind things onto whips with. And you just tie that onto there. See that? Bring that back over your handle a little bit, and that gives you a bit of purchase back onto your handle, so that piece of leather won't just slip straight off. Okay. Like so. Then you can put these two pieces of leather in there. Oop. Just hold them in there like that and bind them in, and that will equal the circumference of the thinnest part of your handle, and also keep that keep a bit of meat in there to make that nice and round so it doesn't just go flat. Okay, I'll just finish this off and I'll show you how it looks when it's finished. Right, now I've bound all that, and you can see what it looks like here, like this. Over this will go a solid kangaroo hide bolster, but first we'll just do a little bit of binding here. And these bindings, I do these progressively as we go through different layers of the whip, and these help to strengthen the transition between your handle and your thong. Now I feel that you must do this. If you don't, you'll get that wet limp noodle effect after you've cracked your whip a few times, and it won't be much good. What you need is a nice smooth transition from your handle to your thong. Now I'll just tie this up here so that it's out of the way. Just temporarily. Now when you put this binding on, what I like to do is start back here at the handle about 2 inches from the end of the handle, and then put it on at about 45 degrees. Alright. Just gently, don't pull too hard at this stage. This is just the first binding. And go out about 2 inches past your handle, and then turn around and go back at 45 degrees again, with about, oh, I don't know, half an inch in between each turn. I'll just get a bit of a close up here. Okay. You can see that. See how I'm doing that? Go back at 45. And I do that about, on this first binding, I do that about 4 times. Now then this time when we go back up here, we'll go in between the rows that we did before. So what we're doing is building up a sort of a herringbone network here, which helps support that transition from thong to handle. See that? Okay, and that's now to tie that off. Take another piece of cotton, put a loop in it like that. See, like that. Lay that on there, and just go over that. I'll just go back a bit so you can see what's going on. Go over that about 3 or 4 times, reasonably tightly. Cut it off and slip this end through that loop there. See, like that? And then just pull back on this, and that pulls that piece of cotton underneath those strands and locks it off. There we go. That's that done. You can see that's the binding there. Right, and it looks a bit rough there. We'll give that a bit of a roll, just to roll it out, and then we'll put a bolster over this, and we'll go from there. Right, now I'll just give this a bit of a roll. I've just got a piece of wood here on the bench. Just roll that out and make it a bit smoother. See that? Just roll that out there. Just give that a light rolling there. So, make it round. Just smooths it out a bit. Want to try and keep things as smooth as you possibly can throughout the whole process, because the better the job now, the better the job will be right at the end. Now we'll need a bolster on this, which I'll make out of kangaroo hide. Whoop. Just go back there. Right. Now to put a bolster on this, what the main idea of this now is we're going to slowly build this up to an 8-foot whip. So as we add layers, we'll always sort of go out a couple of inches past the last layer, and that way we'll build our whip up to the length that we want. Now for this I'll just use kangaroo hide. Now normally you'd do this with the outside of the hide. I'm just going to get a hide and I'll show you. Right, now to make a whip, an 8-foot bull whip, 16 plait, it would take you about, I reckon it'd take 2 hides to make the whip. You'll most likely have a little bit left over. Just trying to find my scissors. But that's about all. So it'll take you 2 hides at 0.7 of a metre. And what you do is use the outside pieces for your belly, and for all your bits and pieces where it doesn't matter if there are scars on the leather or anything like that. Now to measure this up for the bolster, I'll just stop the tape for a minute and then I'll bring it a little bit closer so you can get a really good close-up of the action. Right, now I've trimmed this side of the hide off here, just here, straighten it up a bit. You lay this down here like this, and all you do to gain the measurement for your bolster is just wrap that around there, around your handle there like that. And just bear with me now. As I said, no cameraman, so this has to be done rough and ready. You see that? Just roll that over there like that, and I'll bring this around here so you can see it. Now I've left this piece here. I've left that on purpose because what I'll do is punch a hole through that, and that will enable me to put it on a hook, and it makes it a lot easier to bind this bolster on. Just roll that over there like so. Still trying to get the right angle for you so you can see how this is done. Roll that over there like that. and just mark it with a pen. You see that? And just go along there every 4 or 5 inches, mark it with a pen. See that? Now there's the end, and you'll go out, bring that out about another couple of inches there. See, mark that like that. Now you should be able to see those marks along there. Yes, you can. Okay. Now we just cut them out to the marks. See, we go along there. I'm trying to watch what's going on the TV here and on the TV monitor. Cut this out at the same time and hopefully not cut my fingers off while I'm at it. There we go. Now bring that out to a nice long fine point. See? Right, and that's that. Now I'll show you how we tie this bolster on. Right, now you can see I punched that hole in the end there, and that's so we can hook it over that hook, and it gives us a nice firm base to work off. A bit of leather dressing now. Now we're going to start putting leather dressing on, and put it on fairly heavily. That way that leather dressing will last inside your whip for years and years and years to come. Okay, a bit of cotton. And that's what we do, we just wrap that around there. And bind that on. Now the idea is to make that a nice neat fit around there, so that the edges just join up together nice and neat. If you find at any stage that it does overlap, well, you have to get your scissors and trim it a bit. That way it eliminates any lumps and bumps in your work when you're finished. Now if it doesn't quite meet, well, that's not a big problem. It's when it overlaps it becomes a bit of a problem, because it builds up after a while. You can see this is overlapping nicely. When you're tying these sorts of things on, don't make these pieces of cotton too long, because it makes them very difficult to handle. Make them about 3 foot, 4 foot at the most. You can always just join another piece on. Because it doesn't matter what this looks like, because you won't ever see it. But it does have to be smooth, otherwise it will come out at the end of your whip. It'll come out in the finished product, you'll see. You get lumps and bumps all over the place. Keep going here. Until this is all wrapped up. Now when you've come to the part there where you're going over the last bit of your at the end of your piece of leather there, just stop there for a minute take your scissors. Oop, bit of camera action here. Bear with me. Right. Now you'll see if that's too wide, so it'll just come out to be a flat piece of leather if you're buying that. So what you do is take your scissors and just cut a strip off there like that, along there like that, and just stop there. The back here a little bit, cut another piece. You can see that's cut at a taper, and one piece is longer than the other, so that gives you a bit more taper. And what you'll do then is put those pieces on the inside of this piece of leather, like so, and then you just fold the leather over it like that and tie it on. And that just gives you that rounded effect, and that'll even be more pronounced when you plait over this, because of course it'll squeeze it together and make it nice and round instead of making it flat. Just bind it up to the end. And then we'll go and cut our first belly, our first plaited belly, which will be a 6-plait belly. But before we do that, once again, we'll do a bit of binding at the transition of handle and thong. We'll go and do that now. Now again, in the vise, it needs to be fairly tight because we put a bit more pressure on this now this time. Just tie this up so it's out of the way, otherwise it'll get tangled up with your cotton as you're binding it on. Let's give that a temporary tie up. Now, there's the end of your handle. Do a bit more binding again. And you'll notice I've got this around a piece of wood. I wrap this around a piece of wood like this because it gives me more purchase. So that when I really want to get it tight, I can really put some pressure on it. The stuff I use here is a waxed flat lace, they call it. It comes from Good Brods in the United States. So if you're watching this in the US, you can buy this. Once again, 45 degrees. And back again. Bit of pressure, but not too much. Back again between the rows that you've just done. And you can see here, as we build up these layers, this will get a little bit stiffer. Back again. Not too much pressure, but a bit of pressure. The more of these we do, the more pressure we'll put on as we progress. Okay, come back to there, put your loop in, over it 3 or 4 times, not too much pressure, because if you put a lot of pressure on there, you'll never pull your cotton back through. Okay, through the loop, just pull that back through there, cut it off neat, and go and give it another roll, as we did before. And we'll just roll it out and make it nice and smooth. With these high. Now, as I said before, I'll use 2 hides for this. One's 0.7 of a metre, which we've already straightened up, and the other one is 0.66 of a metre. Now we'll use both of these hides. Now I'm lucky in a way because when I buy my hides I buy them by the 100, so I'm not restricted to just using 2 hides and having to make do with those. So I can cut a piece out of one and a piece out of another one and then come back and take a bit more out of the other one for some other reason. So like I said, I'm lucky in that respect. But if you're going to buy hides to make a kangaroo hide whip, I would buy at least 5 at a time, and that way you can have a bit of pick and choose between your hides, and you can make sure that you get enough for your bellies on the outside and still have plenty left on the inside. Now the weakest part of these hides is the outside. The weakest part is up here on the shoulder and the neck. That's the stretchiest part, and back around the back legs. You can see this is the back. These are the back legs here. The shape of the hide. You can see that there. So there's back leg, shoulder, shoulder, neck, and this is where the tail attaches. Right? You can see there. That's where his tail would have been. Would have gone out that way. That's the strongest part of your leather, because the bits on the outside are stretchy. You'll have scratch marks, a few holes possibly. You can see that hole there, but you can cut around those holes. I mean, you get good hides, but you don't get perfect hides. Perfect hides are just almost impossible to get hold of unless they're very, very small, meaning that they're from babies who haven't been scratched or tossed or tumbled about. Now we're going to do a 6-plait belly for what we've done so far. So what we'll have to do now, firstly, is trim this hide to a roughly, just to get all these wonky bits and pieces out of them, and to get one long smooth cut around the edge. So there's a fair bit of waste in these hides, as you'll see as we progress. Now you can, if you want to, save all these scraps that you're cutting off here. You can, if you want to be really frugal, you can cut short pieces of lace from them and do all sorts of things. But I've found, well, because I'm doing this full time, and because I'd never find a use for all these little bits and pieces of leather, what I do is just throw them in the bin, or in a bin, and then they go to a school, and they're used at the school for making little projects for the kids, little wallets or little wristbands and things like that. You might like to save them and cut your lace out, cut a bit of lace out of them, or make a little key fob or something like that out of it. Now I've trimmed up the outside of this first hide. What I'll do is cut this first belly out of that, and for that I'll use this tool here. You'll see these on my website. These are a copy of an R.E. Williams strander. The original strander looks something like this. This is the original strander I had, and you can see what that looks like. I've had this strander for 37 years, and it was old when I got it, so it's done its job. Time for retirement. A friend of mine who lives not far from me, he's a retired engineer. He dabbles in his machine shop, decided he would make me a new strander. Now a strand cutter. Now we sell these on the internet now. I sell them for Dan, who's the man who makes them, and also a beveler and a strand resizing tool that I have, which I'll show you later on. These are very good. They fit on your finger like so, and the whole thing's just pulled towards you. Here's the adjustment. I've put a coin on mine. You won't, if you do decide to buy one of these, you won't find there's a coin on them. But I put a coin on mine so that I know how many turns. I count quite easily how many turns I've done away from the blade or towards the blade. Old one, new one. Now, this will be a 6 plait belly for this whip, and I thought I had all my tools here, but I haven't, so I'm just going to reach across the camera. Excuse me. Now, how I measure the width of my strands to go around this, I take the diameter of this, which is 7mm, multiply it by 4.5, so I've got 7 multiplied by 4.5, and divide that by 6, and that gives me the width of the strand, which is 6mm. So I've got to cut a 6mm strand, but what I do here now, because this is all from the outside of the hide, I will cut these strands double the width of what I need, because I'm going to stretch them. I'm going to wet them and stretch them and then par them down to size again to the 6mm size. So I want 6 strands. This here is 2.5 feet long, so I want 6 strands at 5 feet, which means I want 30 foot of strands, which I'll now cut from the outside of this hide, and I'll make sure that they're about 12mm wide. Alright, and to cut them from your hide, just go round and round your hide, just like this. See? Just a smooth pull towards you, like that. See that? Just round and round your hide. Till you think you've got about 30 feet. There'll be a fair bit of stretch in these bits of this part of the hide. Okay, got 3, 5, I've got 6 of those. 2, 4, 3. Four, 5 and a bit more. Won't really quite need 6 of those because there'll be a fair bit of stretch in this. Okay. That's that. We'll bundle this up together. Now what I do now is dampen this lace, and when I stretch it, I dampen it by dipping it in a bucket of water, which I'll show you in a minute. Now you can use warm water, and I mean just warm water, and you just, with warm water you just dip it in. With cold water you might have to hold it in for a little bit. Okay, here we go. This is just an ordinary bucket of water. You've got your strands rolled up and just dip them in there. If it was warm, that would be enough. But seeing that it's cold, I'll put in a bit more time because colder water takes a lot longer to penetrate into the leather. That's that. Just shake off the excess water, and now we'll stretch it. Now to stretch it, I go from this hook here, that hook there, to the back door. There's a hook in that back door there. Which is just there. Sorry, focus was out. That's the hook there. Now that's where I stretch the leather to. From whoop, from that hook there, back to that hook at the back door there. Okay. Right, now all I do now is to tie this lace onto that hook. Just an ordinary, just a few half hitches. I pay you to tie that on there very securely because there'll be a bit of pressure coming with that. Drop this in into a bucket I have here on the floor so it's not dragging around the floor. Now I use this screwdriver. This is a fairly heavy duty screwdriver. And I take that and I wrap the leather around that once, like so. Can you see that? Yep. And then all I do is pull back on it. Now I weigh 16 stone, or about 220 pounds. I put a fair bit of weight on that. Hook it around the hook here. See? Then come back. Now what this does is takes all the stretch out. If the strand's going to break, it'll break now. And it makes the leather a lot denser. See? Back around the hook. Now, there's a lot of pressure on this. Be prepared if the strand does break. Quite possible you'll fall over. Either that, or your hands will come back and punch you in the sternum, which can be quite painful. So just be ready. There we go. Now let's stretch that. Now most people would leave it at that, but what I like to do is stretch it twice, just to be sure. Doesn't take that much extra time. Keeps me satisfied. The second time, instead of just wrapping it around once, wrap it around your screwdriver twice, or whatever you decide to use. Use something smooth. Oh, there goes a ruler. Otherwise, it will catch. Let's give it another stretch. And I like to do that with all my strands. That makes them as dense as possible. Makes them very strong. Because you know, with the amount of pressure that you're putting on this, if it's not going to break now, damn sure won't break with the pressure you can put on it by plaiting. That's very well stretched now. Now we'll go to resize it, and then we'll cut it to the lengths that we want, and then we'll resize it again and then bevel it. When we resize it again, we'll resize it in such a way that it gives us a taper on strand. Now this tool here I use to resize all my strands to the size that I want them to be, and to bevel, to put that 45-degree bevel on them as well. Okay. Now it's very simple apparatus. The blade in here is a Schick injector blade. It's a very sharp razor blade. Once upon a time, many years ago, they were used for shaving. Nowadays, they're used for this sort of purpose. Just slips in there, and it's tightened up. And you can see the way that's the gauge there. This pin is so that when you're dragging the leather through, you don't drag your finger back through the razor blade, which can be quite painful. Believe me, I've experienced it. This here is just the adjustment for the width of your cut. So we'll adjust that to 6mm to hopefully. And then all of this is a matter of, I'll put this over there, just a matter of pulling the leather through to get the right size. And we'll just measure that to make sure that it is the right size. We want 6mm. It needs to be a little bit wider. Right, 6mm. Now if you decide to do it this way, now you don't have to buy one of these tools. I'm not asking you to buy one of these tools. These are fairly expensive. It's over $200 for this tool. You can make something like this up with a piece of wood and a razor blade. Or you can go to your local engineering shop and get them to make something up for you along this line. Just remember that this cut here is offset at about a 5-degree angle. So the blade's turned into your cut. It has to be like that, because if you don't do that, the leather will just run off and you'll end up cutting your leather in half or doing something like that. That's for this side. I'm sure someone would be able to make something like this up for you with steel or wood, whatever. These here just hold this together and hold your blade in place. And here's your fence that you use for adjusting the width. Now when you recut your strands, you'll see that as you've gone around the hide, you'll have these bends in your strand. Now the idea is that when you take the pieces off your strand to make it the right width, take it off the outside of the bend, right? And that'll give you less of a bend. And look, that's all it is. You just pull your leather through. You see? And you can see what I mean by stretching. See, there's a few thinner parts there, which are not all that important in this, because this will be part of your belly. You can see that was 12mm originally. By the time we've finished stretching it, a lot of it's gone to under 6mm. I'm going to bring it in a bit closer. You can actually see what's going on here. Oh, couldn't get much closer than that. You see how that's cutting that off there? And all I'm doing is holding that down with my finger. At all times, be careful what you do here. Keep your eye on the ball, because it's just so easy to be talking to someone. Take your eye off this for a minute, a knot comes up and drags your finger straight through that blade. It can be most painful. You see there's a few thin stretches, thin bits there. But as I said, that's not all that important with this bit here, because this is your belly, and these strands will be wide enough, cut wide enough, to take all that up. Look. Right. That's that. Now we'll just go out a bit, we'll zoom out. I'm going to measure these strands into 5 foot lengths, which is roughly double the length of the belly we've got. So measuring into 5 foot lengths. You'll want 6 because we're going to have a 6 plait belly. I'll just do that now. 2, 3, 2, 4, 5. This is number 6. Okay. And separate those into 6 separate strands. You can see there. Right, I've got 6 separate strands here. What I'll do now, I'll leave 2 foot of those strands at 6 millimeters, right? So I'll measure off 2 feet, and then where that is there, I'll just tie a knot in there. Now there's the 2 feet, right? The knot. Now the rest, I'll bring down to 5 millimeters. I'll cut the rest of these strands down to 5 millimeters. And this will give us our gradual taper, you see. And this is how we'll cut all our strands as we go. Our first belly, second belly, and then our overlay will all be cut like this. Well, that's the way I do it. I mean, you can do it with a very sharp knife. There are all sorts of ways to cut out lace. This is the way I like to do it. This is the way I've done it for 33, 35 years now. This is the only way I've ever wanted to do it. A lot of the old time whip plaiters will take a very sharp knife and they use their thumbnail as a guide, and they usually grow that thumbnail there longer. Then they use that as a guide to cut out their lace. But and they'll hold it like that and cut their lace out. Oh well, I've never done it like that, and I'm not about to start now. Now we've left 2 feet at 6 millimeters. We've cut the rest at 5. We'll measure off another foot, and again tie that off. And we'll cut that. We'll trim this down to 4 millimeters. Once again, we're getting our taper. You can see how easy that is. Once that blade gets a little bit blunt, all we have to do is loosen these nails off here and just push the blade down a little bit, and then we've got a new piece of blade. And now we've done those 6 strands at 4 millimeters. What I'll do now is just take about 6 inches, which is about this hand width there, and take the rest down to 3 millimeters. So you can see by now there's a lot more to this than what you think there is. And of course the whole thing is practice, practice, practice. I've got 35 years of practice behind me. But once you've made a whip, don't think that everything is hunky-dory now and you've got it all down pat, because you haven't. Try and learn something new every day. Don't just sit on your laurels like a lot of people I know, and don't learn anything new. I don't think there's a day goes past where I don't learn something. Now we've done that, we're down to 3mm. Okay. Now we're going to put the bevel on the strand, and that enables the strand to sit down nice and smooth once it's plaited. Now this is the beveling side of the tool. Once again, razor blade. Now you'll see this cut here, and I'll zoom in a bit. I'll explain this to you. This cut here is at 45 degrees. Again, this cut here is offset a little bit at about 5, maybe 7 degrees, so that the blade is put in such a way that the leather is actually pulling into the blade. Okay. Your blade just goes in there like that. Now these things can, because they're on an angle, they can get a little bit tight and stick, so it just might need a bit of encouragement. That's it. Now you can see how that's set up there. Let's tighten that up. See? Now you'll notice on this end, and I'll zoom out a bit, I've got a cover on the blade. It's not being part of the blade that's not being used, because if you don't do that, there's nothing surer. You'll run your fingers straight back through it. End of story. Cut finger again can be most painful. I can tell you that from experience. Now the idea of this is to take a 45-degree bevel off the underside of your leather on both sides. Right. Experiment a bit with this. You can adjust this by just giving some light taps, make it a bit deeper. The idea is to take a 45-degree piece of leather off the underside, but not take anything off the good side, if you can help it. Okay, sometimes you can't help it. Like, you just pull that through at a nice steady rate. That's one side done. Now get you a bit closer, and you can see the whole process. See how nice and easy that comes off there? Easy peasy. Now, you couldn't get much easier than that, could you? There you go, that's one side done. Now you turn around and do the other side. And when I've finished that, I'll come back and we'll split these strands. Now this is the splitter that I use the most. We're going to split these strands down to a nice even thickness. I have another splitter. This one here is made by Mike Murphy. A very, very good splitter. These blade, the steel in this blade is exceptional, but so is this one here. I find I use this one more often now because it's a lot easier to adjust. I can just pull that out there and put my strands in there. Whereas this one I have to adjust it manually every time. But I don't think you'll find any of these around now. This is a very old splitter. Osborne's make a good splitter, but they're hellish expensive. They're about nearly $600 I think, US. So you're looking at a lot of money. Now the idea of when you split these strands is to split them down to the thinnest part of your leather, of your strand, so that you keep as much meat, as much leather in your strands as you possibly can. I'll set all 6 in there. There we go. Just take as little off as you possibly can. That's just barely shaving the leather. And that's all you want. As long as it's a nice even thickness all the way through. I'll get that a bit closer if I can. So that's just, like I said, just barely shaving the back off that piece of kangaroo hide. And that's all you want. As I said, you want as much leather there as you can possibly get, maximum strength. There we go. That's that split. Now we'll go to plaiting them. Now we've got our 6 strands. I've tied them on with a piece of cotton around the end here. Now I've tied them on behind where the handle ends. That's where the handle ends there. I've tied them on behind that, and the reason for that is that later on we'll just cut that all this away, and it will be up flush with the end of the handle. Now I've tied them on there, you can see that. Put them in a vise. Now once upon a time I used to do all my plaiting standing up, but after about 30 years, 12 hours a day on your feet, my legs started to get out. Now I used to think it was quite sissy to sit down and plait. I used to think that you couldn't sit down and plait, but of course I've found different, and now that I sit down and plait and do most of my plaiting sitting down, I think it's a bloody good idea. Now this will be just a straight, simple 6 plait. I'll see if I can get you a bit closer here. Now, we'll move you around a bit. Oh. Stand by for adjustment. Right. You've got 3 strands on either side. The 2 middle strands, take them and cross them over like that. Now this is the top strand, 3 strands on either side. This is your back strand on this side, on your right hand side. You take that back strand and you bring it around under 1 strand and over 2. Like so. Now on this side, this is your back strand on your left hand side. Bring it around under 2 strands and over 1, like so. So the whole sequence in 6 plait on this belly is under 1, over 2 on this side, and under 2 and over 1 on that side. So under 1 over 2, under 2 over 1. I'm about to do a video just on plaiting, or a DVD just on plaiting. I've yet to do it, so but when I do, of course a lot of people think plaiting a whip is really easy and anyone can do it, and then all of a sudden they get all the gear together and then remember that they can't plait. So it's a good idea to know how to plait first. If you want to learn how to plait, unashamed plug, get my DVD on plaiting. You see how easy that is. Under 1 over 2, under 2 over 1, under 1 over 2, under 2 over 1. Okay, now I'll just finish plaiting this now until I get to the 4 plait. When I've got the 4 plait, then I'll show you how I drop the 2 strands in. We're at a point now where we want to drop 2 of these strands in because the plaiting's starting to get a little bit crowded here. And look, because this is your belly and no one's going to see it, all you do is just cross these 2 strands over in the middle here and just drop them into the centre and forget that they're even there, and we'll go straight into a 4 plait under 1 over 1. You see that? Now no one's going to see that transition. This is not the way to do it when you do it on your overlay, because you want that hidden as best you can. The ideal is on your overlay when you drop strands is to make it so that nobody can see where you've dropped your strands. But for this purpose it doesn't matter. And we want to make this whole thing about 3 feet long, this belly. We're making an 8-foot whip. Okay, so there's 3 feet. I'll just cut that off there so I know that's where we have to go to. And these strands here, I'll just taper them there. And hang on, I'll just go out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just cutting those with a long, narrow taper. Okay, just take that back there. Now you notice I've got these in a vise. Now the other good thing about sitting down and doing this in a vise is that if you keep your plaiting straight, like your rows nice and straight in here in your vise, everything will come out nice and straight. Whereas if you're on a hook, if you're not very careful, your plaiting will start to twist around your whip, which is not something that you really want. Now I've got enough strands here to give me about 3'6" of plaiting. So I'll just keep going until I actually do the 3'6", and as you can see, this 4 plait is very simple. It's under 1 over 1. You see, reach through there, under 1 over 1, reach through there, under 1 over 1. See how simple that is? If you get this on DVD, you can put this on slow motion and watch it to your heart's content. So just reach through there, grab that one,